Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Royal College of Surgeons Digital Literacy webinar. My name is Ian Kamaly. I'm a paediatric neurosurgeon from Manchester Children's Hospital, and we've got an absolutely fabulous panel this evening. The college is acutely aware that digital literacy is such an important thing, and that's presumably you are all too, and that's why you've joined this evening. So hopefully we'll have an interesting evening with lots of information of what the college is doing and what we're looking to do going forward. So
next slide.
Next slide, yes, please. So this is the panel. We have myself. Joining us hopefully is going to be Kamaly-Asl, who is a council member and the lead for the Future of Neurosurgery group. Francisca Ferreira is a neurosurgical colleague, an ACL, who has done a lot of research in AI in her field. We then are going to hear from Justin Collins, who is a urologist with an expert in robotics, to talk a bit about robotic side of things and training within robotics. We'll have then Jag Dhanda, a MaxFax surgeon who has done a huge amount of work in virtual reality, who will talk about virtual reality and other areas of extended reality. And then we'll have Ed Sinjan, who is an oculoplastic breast surgeon, who is going to talk a little bit about documentation and how digital literacy is going to help with this going forward. Thanks. Next slide, please. So as you can see, we are, the people on the slide there are members of the Royal College of Surgeons, and other panelists have been invited to this, but our views are our own here this evening. Next slide, please. Okay, so let me just very quickly touch on a couple of the things that the college has looked to develop and exciting things that are on the horizon. We're going to have a great talk from Jag Dhanda shortly about extended reality and virtual reality, and he will cover this in a lot more detail. But one thing the college was keen to do with all the new technology is to look to see how it can be harnessed for the benefit of all the members. And that's both for practical uses in looking after and managing patients, but a big aspect of this is, as we're going to hear this evening, training. And as everybody be aware, it's one thing the college does really well, the learning and development side of things. College is really keen to adopt things and to be at the forefront of using new technologies for the benefit of all the members. So one of those things that was looked at was the development of the Extended Reality Lab, which has just opened down in the Bjorn Savin Centre in the basement of the college. And this is some pictures of the lab. So you can see here that it's a room where you've got a 360 projection of an environment, and that can be both indoors as a theatre here or outdoors. There is excellent sound that goes into the lab. And it's creating a realistic environment for various types of learning and facilitating. This is a plan of the lab itself in the middle here, and you've got the control room, and you've got seminar rooms attached to it so people can see exactly what's going on, and that feed can obviously be sent anywhere to distant places. You don't have to be on site for that. One of the other things that we've been looking at from the digital group, so I was put in charge of the digital group for the college, which is now a part of the Future of Surgery group. One of the things we've been trying to look at is work here with the Digital Futures team from Torbay Hospital. They have a lot of expertise in 3D modeling. The Anatomy and Pathology Museum, I'm sure many of you will have visited it in the college, again down in the basement, is a fantastic resource. There is an electronic version in 2D of the Anatomy and Pathology Museum that's available on the Learning Hub through the college. But we're looking with the Digital Futures team to see if we can 3D model the specimens, make them interactive, and make this fantastic resource just a bit more accessible for all the members wherever they are. So, as I say, the key thing with what we're trying to do at the college is not just look at the technology for the technology's sake, really look at things that are going to be of benefit, be at the forefront of this and try and provide facilities for the members and fellows that we can keep answering that eternal question, what does the college do for me? Okay. So that was just a very quick introduction from me. We're going to start off. So we've got 4 talks, and then we'll hopefully have some time for questions at the end. As you'll have seen in the link, if you've got any questions, if you pop those in the live Q&A, and then we can try and answer some as we go along potentially, but hopefully then go through a few things at the end. So I'd like to start by asking Francisca to do her presentation, please.
Thanks, Ian, and thanks for having me. So firstly, thanks for the overview of the great work that the college is undertaking in terms of modernizing training. As a background, my name is Francisca Ferreira. I'm a neurosurgery trainee. I'm an ST5 in Cambridge, and my talk is about the use and implementation of AI in surgery from a trainee's perspective. Next slide, please. So just a bit of background so that you guys understand my journey and how I feel about AI and how I feel about the role of AI in modern surgical training. So I'm gonna release an inflammatory statement, because I do believe that the future of surgery is being written in code as much as it is in medical journals. And why do I say that? So most of my training, or all of my training, was like a lot of us was clinical, up to a point where I decided to expand my knowledge repertoire and go and do a master's in medical physics at UCL, which was a transformative experience, simply because I looked under the bonnet of all these technologies that we use, that we aim to use, and that we aim to implement to the benefit of our patients. I can't really see my slides anymore, I'm afraid. Thank you. I looked under the bonnet and I saw an abyss, and this abyss was mostly the abyss of my own ignorance. So it was a fantastic learning opportunity where I learned to code, where I learned techniques in neurocomputation, techniques in image processing, techniques in machine learning, and went on to do my PhD in connectomic surgery, so looking at and also anatomical phenomics applied to functional neurosurgery. Then on, I went to continue my work where I am now at the moment. I'm a clinical lecturer at Cambridge, and I'm also a Zinc and IJAR Innovation Fellow, where I've transposed some of the skills that I learned in image segmentation. I'm looking into trying to predict Parkinson's disease from looking at images of retinas. Next slide, please. I'm a big Kubrick fan, so there's always a Kubrick slide on my talks. Most of the times, I apologize, it's inevitable. So I don't think we're undergoing an epic drama. There is certainly room for adventure and exploration, but AI is not the future. AI is here, and is here today. And it occupies multiple roles of our practice. So perception, and this is gained by computer vision. It can simulate reasoning, mostly by machine learning, and all that machine learning is statistics. And this is what we need to impart to our community, that all these skills are learnable, acquirable, and masterable. So action, this is gained mostly through robotic control. And there are several learning models. One of the most common ones is reinforcement learning. That doesn't mean that that's an absolute. And we know with the expansion of LLMs, and we've all had experience with LLMs, I'm sure, is also being increasingly incorporated into AI pathways in surgery. And the next step to this is there's already a degree of workflow optimization, but what there isn't in surgical training in the UK is skills assessment. And this is important for everyone. We're all lifelong learners in our profession, but particularly for trainees. So this is something that needs to be introduced in our system, I believe. And multimodal integration in terms of obviously images. So AI is very developed in terms of imaging processing, but we can incorporate genetics and other characteristics of patients to make more, let's say, integrated systems. But this is a work for tomorrow, or is a work in progress. Next slide, please. So as I said, image processing is very developed in AI, and I can't speak for other fields because I'm a neurosurgeon, but particularly in neurosurgery, we work with image segmentation all the time, trying to define boundaries of tumors, trying to ascertain what is healthy and what is unhealthy tissue, what is safe and what is eloquent tissue, and what should we not resect, and how should we handle the brain, and how should we plan an operation. This is part of computer vision and vision enhancement, not so much being applied to neurosurgery, but for example, there's instances of it being applied to laparoscopic surgery, where it can actually do away with the smoke with the cavity and refine the surgeon's vision in the operating field. Planning, risk modeling, and also implant sizing for other specialties, and intraoperatively is being used for navigation, robotics, video analysis. And then the next step to all of this is deterioration prediction. And then this goes into assessment of surgical candidacy of individuals, and complication alerts ideally, but this is a somewhat still remote reality. Next slide, please. So I believe, and I will go into the trainee perspective in a couple of slides, but ultimately I'm a big believer in democracy, as I hope we all are in these challenging times. I'm a big believer in the potential of AI to democratize surgical excellence, and particularly in the remit of global surgery. And why do I say this? Because this can basically, the use of AI can flatten learning curves and basically train more surgeons. And this is important in terms of global workforce, by addressing the shortages that those forces have. And it can flatten the learning curve. And it can also increase surgical capacity without proportionally increasing costs, which is very pertinent in the NHS. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits for trainees? So Ian's given a very nice overview of what the college is doing, trying to use VR simulation to amplify surgical training. And I think this is really the way forward. And it's places like Stanford are already doing this since 2016. So we really need to sort of use this drive as a locomotive to try and catch up with this delay and develop our system. But go beyond that and use AI to give us some personalized feedback, an objective assessment of technical skill. And the term that's used in AI enhanced training is sustained deliberate practice, which means that the AI system will give you constant feedback, immediate feedback, and require you to repeat the same task over and over again until basically you've nailed it and you've clinched it, and then it will allow you to move forward from then on. And this is different from sporadic exposure to a given technique or a given circumstance that occurs naturally throughout surgical training. So we can iron this out and expedite this by repeating the same situation, same scenario, same maneuver over and over again until someone masters it. And that's obviously a massive accelerator. Then that's obviously in terms of technical skills. But if we think about, all of us have to do admin, and trainees have to do a ridiculous amount of admin, so do consultants. But this could all be sort of much more expedited if there is a pipeline to automatize admin, and that equates to more theater time, and then that allied with the sustained deliberate practice, you can see that this is a massive accelerator in acquiring skills in a much shorter time frame. And then obviously we all need to consult evidence, we all need to consult papers, we all need to consult literatures in our practice. And so obviously AI and large language models that gather that evidence in a safe, sort of concise and accurate way is obviously very important for training. This should be integrated in our practice, not someone just doing that of their own accord. Next slide, please. So what I think trainees need is, so from my experience, and this is why I gave you my initial slide of my personal journey or my professional journey, is that I think AI literacy and training in machine learning, and as I said, all machine learning is statistics and some algebra and some calculus, which all of us have had some previous training on, and we just need to elaborate on that. All of this is graspable. And also learning to code. That there should be programs of that allow medical students to intercalate, and I think they already are, but there needs to be modules of literacy for people in training, and as opposed to it being regarded as an optional, because it's not the future, it's current practice, and we need to board this train really. And I think we need to have supervised exposure to real clinical AI tools. Obviously, there need to be governance and safety frameworks, and the trainees who are, the workforce, the coal-face workforce, need to be involved in evaluation and procurement of these tools. Next slide, please. So trainee voice, I do think we should shape or should help shape implementation. Then again, the caveat is that AI must enhance and not replace or dilute skill acquisition. And it's important to respect our autonomy as practitioners. Next slide, please. So I've deliberately, I think subconsciously, made this slide a bit more bare because it's boring. But yeah, there are risks from using AI. Obviously, a risk of over reliance and as descaling clinically and practically. There's unclear medical legal responsibility from using these tools, and there needs to be validation and transparency, and obviously evidence-driven use as opposed to exploratory use. Next slide, please. So that's basically all that I said, and there always needs to be a human in the loop. That's my view of AI. Next slide. Future direction. So this is what I'm most excited about. So basically how we have all these tasks that AI can perform in terms of image segmentation, in terms of clearing the surgical view, in terms of assisting with movement. But I do believe that where AI is going to be really revolutionary in the future is in surgical candidate selection. So by integrating a variety of patient characteristics, we'll be able to determine what natural course someone is going to follow, if surgery can interrupt that natural course, and what the outcomes will be. And I think the next step from that is really the creation of what's called these digital twins. So you can create a phantom, basically a simulation of your patient and the pathology and their anatomy, and basically predict surgery and the surgical outcome on that patient. And I think that's a big ambition, but it's coming. Again, so hopefully all these platforms would give us real-time alerts and guidance, and also help us potentially with our MDT with live evidence pool. Next slide, please. So as a conclusion, I think AI enhances safety, precision, and training. As I said, I think it's time that we do some catch up in training our workforce, and training not only the workforce to use the tools, but to understand the tools so they can make reasoned decisions on what the tool recommends. And it's necessary to look under the bonnet and confront the abyss. And I think governance and education are essential. And I do believe that we'll be augmented by AI, and we should go further, but not be fearful. Thank you.
That's absolutely fabulous. Thanks, Francisca. That's an excellent overview of things. Part of the problem that we've got with this is that there's so much to cover in this field, but we are doing what we can to cover that. So let's move on to Justin Collins now, who is a urologist and expert in robotics, who will take the next bit of the talk. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, Ian. So hopefully you can hear me okay. So I'm going to present on some aspects of robotic surgical training that is related to a Delphi process that we did with the Royal College of Surgeons. And this was to train robotic surgeons, not just on how to be better trainers, but also to understand what was available in novel technologies. We can consider that we're in a third wave of surgical training. We've had the Halstead See One, Do One, Teach One. We've had metrics-based, which is still really important to standardize training and to give us benchmarks. But actually with digitalization, we've got the option to bring in automated or semi-automated data collection that can look at computer vision, the orientation metrics, but also the kinematic data, the performance data. And we can start to pull in data points from diagnosis through to planning, operation, and recovery, and giving us predictive AI. It's really important that we understand ways to make training more accessible and more scalable and affordable. So this was the Lancet Commission on Global Surgery for 2030, and they estimated that they needed 2.2 million more surgeons. And the cost of training these surgeons and anesthetists and obstetricians was 350 billion, but actually the loss to GDP was 12.3 trillion for people not having access to surgical care. So whenever we think of approaches to surgery, whether it's an expensive ends like robotic surgery, we need to think about ways that we can make it more scalable and affordable. And one way to do this is with the FAIR and CARE principles. So FAIR is making it more accessible, findable, accessible, interoperability, learning from different data sets, different approaches, and reusable content. And CARE is about rewarding all the stakeholders, so collective benefit, authority to control, responsible, and ethical. Whenever we talk about robotic surgery and we have different platforms, we need to think about data that is platform agnostic and how we can learn from the current surgeons that have the expertise, but also the medtech devices that have the data. So what are the current needs for surgical training? Well, we need awareness of the importance of training. We need awareness of novel technologies and when to use them. We need agreement on what is good performance. So we need more objective metrics. We need personalized performance feedback, which is immediate and enables, as Francisca was saying, deliberate practice. We need access. That includes time set aside for training. We need access to labs, or we need to do things more locally. It needs to be affordable, and we need to have engagement. So if we start with the concept that 50% of surgeons are below average, it sometimes doesn't engage everyone. But actually what we want to do is improve everyone, as they've done other high reliability organizations. We've got opportunities for data automatic. So this is automatic performance metrics, the kinematic data. So you can see here on the left, a more experienced surgeon has more controlled movements. The novice has more random, larger movements. And actually they've used this data and put it into AI to predict length of stay and also early continence. In this study, they took images and showed that if you did a good bladder neck dissection and nice anastomosis, this actually predicted early continence outcomes as well. And this is from our training educational platform we've done to get people to identify the different landmarks, the targets of the organs, and to code for that. And then we can, the trainers can see when they review whether they've been able to identify all the key anatomical landmarks. And ongoing work that's being done between UCL and Royal Free is actually looking at tracking the instruments and essentially giving us kinematic data from a 2D video. And if we do that with in stereo vision, then we can start to get 3D images. And we can use it to look at angles. We can use it to identify anatomy. We can also use it because force equals mass times acceleration. It might give us also some force information as well. So we've got all this amazing data. We need to have a gold standard to say this is currently what good looks like. We need digital training to disseminate knowledge. If we build up networks with telepresence services, I think that's going to be a big step forward in the immediate future to learn from experts and give people access to expertise. Then we've actually got the opportunity to start to develop the networks and develop data. If we can have common ontology to collect data, then we can have big data analysis from things like data registries, and then we can start to use AI and machine learning. The limitations are currently mainly with interoperability between different devices and systems. That means that we're collecting data in different ways or in different areas, and doesn't make it obviously comparable. And we also need to incentivize surgeons to share their data. So there's a lot of work that is ongoing in the ethical sort of elements of this that's really important. Then we can start to put in the data with perception, interpretation, and then you start to get the outcomes that starts to give you real learning, real assistance to the surgeon. Everything from selecting the right patient to early warning systems in the OR, and also helping with post-op recovery. So we looked at how we could standardize things with a Train the Trainer program, and looking at metrics and teaching them about metrics and benchmarks. Then we looked at network development, and then we looked at collecting that data to have machine learning and AI. This one, we looked at novel technology. So it's a sort of an update of the original Train the Trainer one. I'm just going to very quickly go through these last couple of slides, but we looked at consensus on the ontology, the terminology. We looked at prerequisites, what they needed. We looked at different elements of it. One of the important parts is that you have a similar language to discuss. So we got consensus on multiple aspects of the ontology, the taxonomy. Things like, what is a preceptor? What is a proctor? We've probably in robotic surgery used the word proctor incorrectly. A proctor in the Oxford English Dictionary is somebody who adjudicates in an exam, and they're not there to give the examinee assistance. So probably that's the wrong word that we've been using. A preceptor is somebody who can give instruction, give guidance, and can actually take over. And then we've got mentors, which may or may not even be a medically qualified person. So we need to sort out some of the terminology there. We need to know what the difference between competent and proficient is. We need to understand the principles of surgical data science. If we look at attributes, knowledge, and skills of a trainer, this is from an old paper, but there's actually a lot of these really benefit from digitalization. So if you look at the sort of skills, is adaptable and flexible, promotes critical thinking, promotes self-directed learning, provides timely summative evaluations, uses IT effectively. We can start to really engage with these historic ways of describing good trainers and start to think about how we can make them more applicable in digital settings. We cover all the subject matters, everything from non-technical skills, human factors, but also how to deal with difficult trainees, how to debrief, take-home messages. So that was all covered. We had some exercises on how to use metric-based progression exercises, how to explain things like cognitive overload, when to use the 6 steps of stop, identify, explain, structured teaching, elicit, check of understanding, proceed of safe. So that's an accepted way of when to interrupt and stop and proceed when things are safe. And then we did looking at all the different types of technologies and which ones could be used in a sort of digital setting. So the blue ones, again, in digital setting. And here we looked at in robotic surgery, we need to think of the instructions for use, the device training. We need to think about how we get people through basic skills training, the fundamentals of robotic surgery, and then how we do procedure-specific training. So you've got all these sort of different areas that could be used in different ways. And this gives us a really transparent way to do regulation. So one of the findings from the Delphi was that society should have oversight, or in the UK, things like the GMC, but we need a regulatory body that is unbiased and is able to interpret knowledge and skills acquisition and assessments that is with a standardized approach. So digitalization of surgical training gives us that route. So in conclusion, we were able to get agreement from academics, expert trainers, and industry. We've got, I think, a good foundational content for people to set up a Train the Trainer course in technique and technology. And the findings are aligned with previous expert consensus that the endpoint for skills assessment in surgery should really be video recording that is independently reviewed by several people to say that the person has the right level of skills acquisition. So I will try and stop sharing now.
That's excellent. Thanks so much, Justin. It is a really fascinating part of this question of digital literacy and the training. It's a really great overview of the work you're doing. This one of the questions is the sort of spread of knowledge and digital ability of surgeons is great, as we know, and it's trying how we can make sure that everybody is at the level that they need to be at. It's a really interesting part of this whole discussion. So fabulous, thank you. Could we move now on to Jag Dhanda, a Max Fac surgeon who is doing some absolutely incredible work in the VR field, both here in the UK, but really great work in global surgery. So Jag, please, could you do your bit?
Thank you, Ian. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, that's perfect, thanks.
Super. I'm going to share my screen, and let's hope it's the right screen that I put up. It should be that. I'm just going to do that and share. And can you see that okay, Ian?
Black currently for me.
Okay, let me try that again.
Oh, there we go. There's
okay. And if I do that, is that still black?
No, I can see your version of your browser looking at the Aircast Studio.
Let me just come out to stop sharing for a second, and then I will reshare. Let's try that one. How about that? Is that my presentation slide?
It is, but it's got the thumbnails. But it's your presentation.
Is that okay? I mean, can you manage with the thumbnails?
It's quite small, the actual slide, because it's
okay.
portrait rather than landscape. Yeah.
Let me just try to stop share, and we'll try the window. If I try the entire screen, how about that? There we go. That should work. And how about that? Have you got that?
It's just coming, hopefully. No, still black.
Okay. Any suggestions, Eduardo?
Oh, there you go. That is your whole screen now. That is your whole screen.
Okay. And then what about if I go into presenter mode? Is that still going black?
No, that's perfect.
Brilliant. Okay. Super. There we are. Digital literacy and struggling to get my presentation going. The irony. Good evening, everybody. My name's Jag. I'm a consultant surgeon, head neck reconstructive surgeon at East Grinstead, and a professor of surgery, but also a professor of extended reality. And I'm just going to give you a brief tour of what's been going on over the last few weeks. And I think some of this feedback just kind of encapsulates what we're managing to achieve. And what I love about some of these slides is that it's not just all happening down in the south of the country. It's happening everywhere in the UK. We were running workshops in last week in Hull, Manchester, Edinburgh, Exeter, UCL, and then back up to Manchester. And I guess it says it all. You know, the feedback we get is phenomenal. It was unreal. The view was clear, and felt that I was in theatres. It was so good having multiple views, and I felt like the surgeon was cutting the abdomen in front of me. But also combining some of our resources with anatomy. The best way to learn anatomy is to walk into anatomy, and that's what virtual reality enables you to do, because once you walk into anatomy, you'll never forget it. So let's show you how we've managed to achieve that. And I'm going to focus really on extended reality and AI and our road to digital literacy as we start to see wide-scale adoption of this technology. And, I'm going to be a little bit controversial in saying that actually, learning to code is one thing. Generative AI will probably allow you to overcome the many hours required to sit and code, but I don't think the next generation would necessarily need to do that. I still think the nuances need a deeper understanding of things like coding and how to create sixth off in Real Engine in Unity. But how many doctors and surgeons, particularly in training, have time for that? It is very time consuming. And I say that because I used to code and sit for hours on Unity creating assets. There's my declaration of interest. I'm the CEO and founder. And so what we're essentially doing is transforming medical and surgical training using a combination of extended reality. And I think AI is the critical thing that is a pivot for this technology. because what it has now enabled us to do is to really kind of streamline the process in creating simulations. And I'll give you some examples of that. So again, some really nice feedback. There's a little video with some audio, and I'll just play that for a second while you read. But I think the videos say it all. So this is a VR session in Exeter last weekend.
So today we're going to be asking people what they're expecting from our VR workshop. So what are you expecting from the workshop?
Well, I've never experienced VR in any shape or form before.
I'm really looking forward to the interactive part of it. I've never done it before, so I'm looking forward to it.
So what did you think about the workshop?
I really enjoyed it. It was so cool. I really enjoyed the VLS simulation. Actually doing it in person was really just incredible. I really enjoyed it. Like learning all the anatomy on a 3D model and being able to make all the forms. That was really cool. And also watching the surgeries, that was incredible.
Immersive and real than I thought it was, and I feel like I got to see more. I really enjoyed the VR surgery because I got to see more than I did in actual theatre, and having to lean over the consultant's shoulder. So it was a very enjoyable experience.
Well, thank you very much.
And so that's really quite important, getting to see more than I actually do in theatres. The weekend before, I was in Dublin onboarding the Republic of Ireland, both a women in surgery group, and I've spent the last year onboarding and training hundreds of undergraduates in extended reality. And so at the same time as the Dublin onboarding session, this was going on in London. We were onboarding all of the London reps for each of the universities. And I'm going to kind of focus in on the women in surgery group because that's been a recent group. And right now, as we speak, I've got my tech team with the women in surgery reps that are just going through a rehearsal of a VR meeting. And these are women in surgery undergraduates throughout the whole of the UK, preparing for a session tomorrow by a general surgeon on appendicectomy, using a combination of VR demonstration of lecture material, then VR remote but immersive anatomy demonstration, followed by a remote synchronized VR. And I'll just kind of unpick that terminology for you. And so I think it's technology that empowers. And I'll finish off with my global South perspectives and how digital literacy for us is important, but also digital literacy for low resource settings as well. And so this is just some screenshots of in the first few sessions I was actually running the tech myself. It was a reconstructive session, and I was able to connect with the members of the Women in Surgery group with just a simple VR device and a good internet connection, and they could watch me performing surgery, and I could control that from the comfort of my own home. And that's then led on to the second and the third. The session on last week was thyroid surgery. So we had an ENT surgeon demonstrating VR anatomy, followed by the surgical procedure. And what we're doing tomorrow is an appendicectomy as well. And I think this has been the big pivot for me and for IMS, is in understanding and empowering that generation to be able to adopt this technology. And I set up the Undergraduate Surgical Society, and it manifests with putting together probably some of the greatest talent, and I call them the future surgeons, when we had our first conference. But I was also at a military base in Essex last week, looking at the applications of remote synchronized VR for Army, Navy, and the Air Force as well. So you're not going to see many pictures with that many headsets on. And for me, it's about getting the headsets on as many people as possible. And I think it's wonderful having the technology with VR. It's great having software, interactive VR, synchronized VR, but ultimately it just comes down to people. And it's people that make these sorts of technologies work and can untangle the complexity of digital literacy. So let's give you another example. Last week of a presentation at the ASSET conference that won a prize, revolutionizing anatomy education, the impact of virtual reality workshops. And we just evaluated that, the series of workshops that we're running with these independent explorations, and then essentially looking at feedback. And you can see that the scores are high in all aspects of understanding confidence in ear, nose and throat, upper limb, lower limb, understanding and being able to visualize complex structures, certainly deep pelvis and head and neck. I think if you can walk into that anatomy, you'll understand it. But also, only a couple of weeks ago, we had a publication of a multi-center prospective study where more than 150 medical students watched me raise a radial forearm free flap using immersive techniques, and we can see some very high statistical p-values in both understanding surgical perspectives and anatomical perspectives. And so this technology brings both efficiency in learning and equity for learning as well. And so it's a combination of presence with this extensive library that we've created. This is across the board in every surgical specialty. There's nothing like it. More than 300 simulations from Navy, from military front damage control to general surgery, obs and gynae. Of course, haptics is some way away from being realized, I think, with this technology. And so the way that we mitigate and manage that is that we combine this technology with these expert-led cadaveric courses. And, Ian, we talked about running advanced courses for master classes. I set up a master class in complications, and it's the first hands-on cadaveric course that was sold out within a week. There's a real appetite for senior consultants and end of training residents to learn managing complications, because often we don't encounter them until they occur. And of course, these virtual reality workshops have enabled the reach with more than 150 workshops. And so it's a combination of the hardware, like I said, in-person, remote, synchronized VR, and the ability to co-create as well. But let's just look at this month's activities. Sold out earlier this month in Hull, workshop in Exeter. And that's the workshops we're running just this month alone. In the first series, we ran more than 100 workshops over 3 months. This second season, we call it, is over 6 months. But at the beginning of the month, very busy. And last week, we were Edinburgh, Hull, Cambridge, Exeter and Newcastle. And this week, we've been Edinburgh, Southampton, Worcester, Bristol, Birmingham and Dundee running workshops. And you can see it just goes on. We actually ran a burns course as well at the last cadaveric course, and we're quietly confident that this may well be integrated into every burns unit in the UK. So this is another example of the technology. This is SIXTOF. SIXTOF is where you can create objects or assets. You can either design them in software like Real Engine, but using these assets and being able to move them in VR, but also using videos that give you an immersive experience with overlays is what the students really love, because it gives them the best seats in the house. So it's a tracheostomy tube that you can pick up, and I'm giving a lecture, and I've got students that are all over the country. They're in the OR with me, and I'm demonstrating how I would perform a tracheostomy, clearly marking out the surface anatomy, going through the dissection in layers, where the critical parts of that anatomical perspective is in for emergency front of neck access, and you can see that perspective. So using those combinations of SIXTOF and immersive experiences that are remote. And so in this example, we had 24 students all over the UK a couple of weeks ago. They put on a headset, they joined me, we compared the experience in traditional teaching versus an immersive approach across the 4 nations. And these are all students all dotted around the UK, and I'm demonstrating them front of neck access. And they're all connected with one thing, and that's a VR headset. So season 1, as I said, was 100 events, 3,000 experiences. Season 2, where we already have 80 events registered, we're expecting more than 10,000 undergraduates and early careers to have experienced surgical training using this technology. And when we start to explore the phases of teaching and training, the first phase was quite simple, just screencasting, putting a headset on, understanding the headset, how to use VR anatomy and how to use our library. But we're moving into phase 2 and phase 3, and that will bring in more AI integration, generative AI for creating these digital scenarios, interactive XR, synchronized VR, and then remote immersive learning. So we've taken a stepwise approach in rolling out that digital literacy amongst an entire generation. And so this is an example of Gaussian split, where we can create avatars that are ChatGPT enabled. So imagine having a simulation where you can talk to yourself and you seem to have the world's knowledge at your fingertips, and it can describe surgical procedures, indications for surgery, common complications as an avatar in a simulation. That's what we're creating in our phase 3. And this is our package. And this is an example of 6 degrees of freedom. But in the interest of time, I'm going to sit and just skip through some of these slides. So we've created a hub and spoke model that gives essentially every medical school in the UK now access to this content. And when we look at the global south perspective, you've got an orthopedic surgeon who's using VR anatomy for a cadaveric course for approaches to the hip. But as well as the UK, our focus is on digital literacy, and we've set up 5 hubs in Africa, and we've donated more than 20 headsets to these countries, and they run workshops and they spend time with me learning in the UK how to use the tech. So we've talked about phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3. We're in phase 2 now, which is synchronized and remote VR. And what synchronized and remote VR allows you to do is to be able to run teaching sessions from the convenience of your own home, all controlled in a room with a tablet, multiple devices, and that's real applications for residency. This is an example of interactive VR, these little green dots that appear that can make those passive experiences interactive, and you can add Q&A. So in this scenario, I'm raising a Radio 4 on free flat. So this is cadaveric, obviously no photos, please. Please don't do any screen capture. Which preoperative test confirms ulnar arterial flow? It's an Allen's test. So I can create a Q&A, but also I can change the narrative of the interactions depending on the grade, and I can focus the view to different parts of the operation as I progress through the surgery as well. So that's a view from the side, that's an overhead view, and then I can have a close view for particular parts of the operation. And then I think in this last couple of slides, this is Kathy demonstrating uterine inversion. You can see the challenge of a single camera is that you can't move it. We have overlays that will appear in a second. I can track the eyes, and in phase 3, we'll be using adaptive learning with AI approaches in an immersive experience with the virtual overlay. And those adaptive interactions will change depending on where the participants look. So this is the group, and I'll show you some of the majority of the onboarding sessions was quite intense. Every week we'd be going to these events and showing trainees how you can walk into anatomy, and you see an ENT surgeon walk into the pharynx, a great way to learn anatomy. And that's why we get such a wonderful reception when the students see anatomy in this way. But of course, in the global south, there isn't an access to cadavers, and so it's great for them to be able to have access to this as a resource for training and learning complex anatomy. This going from what Ian's talking about with scanning, we're in the next course going to be using 54 cameras to scan photogrammetry, a cadaveric dissection as the interface between VR anatomy and our surgical library to see real close-up images of anatomy as objects in the VR headsets. And so we create simulation content. I'll zip through this. So finally, finishing off with the UK experience. Now, every medical school, more than nearly 5,000 experiences. In fact, I've just been told by my team, 3/4 of the undergraduates and participants feel it's more effective than traditional learning. You learn more in 10 minutes. And our series will roll out across all the surgical specialties. You're 16 times more likely to remember this. And if we look at the p-values, 80% of undergraduates say they have limited experience. But when we combine all of these approaches with VR anatomy, and we look at the p-values from across the board with the 100+ workshops, highly statistically significant improvements in knowledge acquisition using these approaches and anatomical confidence. And I think this is where the future will be for integration. And just to finish with the last couple of slides on digital literacy for the Global South, as I've said many times, I've traveled to 9 countries over the last year and published our work in Africa. And we are now starting to establish these approaches. These are 2 surgeons from Cameroon and Burundi, 2 surgeons from Kenya, 2 from Tanzania, and 2 from Uganda. And these are workshops that were running last week in Africa. And I think this is how we will deal with the workforce plan. So if you want to get in touch or follow what we do, it's mainly on Instagram. I'm too old for Instagram, but I have to follow the advice. But that's where you'll see what we do if you're interested in more.
That's fabulous. Yeah, that's absolutely excellent, and such incredible work that you're doing. Thank you for that. The accessibility is such an important thing. The undergraduates get such little exposure to surgery. This is really enhancing that. And as you are showing, the technology is exponentially increasing. It's so important as surgeons that we keep on top of that with the work that you're doing. It's brilliant. So the last talk, and we do have a mission to run over the hour a little bit, which is good. So we're going to have Ed St. John, who is going to talk a little bit about EPR and surgical workflow and that aspect of digital literacy. So thanks very much, Ed.
Thanks a lot. Hopefully you can hear. It's a pleasure to be invited to this webinar. I'm Ed St. John. I'm a consultant oncoplastic breast surgeon at Portsmouth and an associate professor there. I co-founded a digital consent company called Concentric that some of you may hopefully know about. But I've got the pleasure to talk to you really on behalf of the Innovation Hub about clinical documentation, EPRs and beyond. So my disclosures I've just told you about. Okay, so what I'm talking about impacts everyone listening. You cannot be a surgeon and escape this. It's part of the NHS long-term plan. It's just been updated. Digital is here to stay, and more than it being here to stay, it's accelerating incredibly fast. And this little quote, the plan is to take the NHS from the 20th century technological laggard it is today, the 21st century leader it's got the potential to be. So the will is there. What's the current landscape? So everyone will probably be used to using their own electronic healthcare records. The trainees amongst you will be used to going from hospital to hospital, some with the same electronic healthcare record providers, some with different healthcare record providers. But essentially, clinical documentation has gone digital. Now, interestingly, the main players, some of which are I've got the logos on the screen, are actually US firms, and they were really set up with the fundamental aim of solving the billing problem. And what that really means is that we're dealing in the UK with these big systems that do clinical notes, but are inherently built to solve US billing. So we'll just have that in the back of your mind. There are obviously other electronic healthcare record providers as well. The benefits are that there's centralized patient information, there's improved legibility, there's remote access to data, and obviously there's a whole load you can do from a dashboard, audit, research point of view. But the burdens, as we all know, it's time consuming. Currently, they're clunky, but their main thing, the problem is interoperability. And because we've got these electronic healthcare record systems that aren't necessarily designed with the specialist in mind, they're designed to suit the buyer. And you've got to remember that the buyer of the electronic healthcare record system is not the surgeon. The buyer is the CIO and the CCIO, and it's made at executive level within the hospital. And what that often means, therefore, is that it's not particularly suiting the need of the specialist, and it's not, therefore, often suiting the need of the surgeon. And the way you can suit the need of the surgeon is to start using modules, for example, like Jag just explained, but they need to integrate back into the backbone. If you think about how we currently use digital healthcare, currently use digital outside of healthcare. You've got your Microsofts, you've got your Apples, you've got platforms, but of course you use a whole load of different software providers within your operating system. And that's a place we probably need to get to. And what that really means is that bad tech can make situations worse. And there's a lot of burnout, and a lot of burnout has been attributed to electronic healthcare records. And part of the problem of that is that electronic healthcare records haven't really been made with UX design. So the reason people love Apple is because they've spent a huge amount of money on UX design. UX design means user experience design. So what does it feel for the user? And here we are talking about digital literacy. And the reality is that if a product is designed well, then the user doesn't need to be literate. They should be able to just understand it and use it. And that hopefully is where we're going to get to. So where's the future? Well, the future is coming very, very fast to us. And the future is that we don't need to be so much engaging in screens and clicking, and that we're starting to have more ambient scribing. And this is already here. And on my next slide, I'll show some examples of that. But once you've got the ability to listen to what's going on, and you've then got the ability to integrate with other data sources, from your image libraries to your pathology results to your written text, and you can do some intelligent summarization, then you can start moving into some really useful AI sort of mechanisms. And you can start meaning that the doctor doesn't need to be always facing the computer as they see the patient, but hopefully can turn their face back to the patient and start treating the patients as we were always designed to do. So in a way, the aim of the digital literacy is that we don't need to be digitally literate. But this is where we're currently at, and there's a huge amount of data being performed within a surgical journey. And a surgical journey is complex, and this is a gross oversimplification of the journey, and I've probably missed out a whole load of software providers and things on here. But it was my way of thinking about, you know, what are all the emerging concepts within it. So top left here, we've got AI, and we've already heard about large language models. Large language models are here to stay, and they are coming into medicine fast. We've got this sort of the big providers like Google and Microsoft, ChatGPT, and Meta, but Meta's also got the open source Llama, and there's a whole load of open source AI that's coming. But the large language really means that it can start processing big volumes of written information. And then we've got the ambient AI, and I've talked about that. We've got the Heidi's, we've got the Dragon Copilots, which is Microsoft. This is coming fast. We've got Heidi, Tandem, Tortoise. These are just to name but a few. But beyond that, we've got agentic AI, and agentic AI are basically agents, specialist agents that surface within a large language model and particularly pick specific things apart. So you can have your large language model that can interpret your sort of ambient AI and your world and knows the internet, but then your agent can know specifically ring-fenced about your own specialty and can sit and dive in and start acting on your behalf. So the idea is that we'll start having agents that will work for us, for example, in an MDT setting, where you've got an agent representing an oncologist, an agent representing a surgeon, an agent representing a radiologist, an agent representing a pathologist, and they will all be doing jobs to deep dive and assimilate their information, and then they will often be presented to a further agent who will summarize that all and give it information back to you. And I think this is really where we'll see some of the quickest advances. Once we've got clean data and we employ these agents, we're going to start getting some really powerful information, because of course computers can be processing this information so much faster now than our human brain. We've also got the whole pathway though. We've got diagnostics. So we've got like Deep Health is radiology AI, Page is pathology AI. We've got preoperative assessment, and that's being digitized. We've got prehabilitation, these examples, surgical health, onco health, they're looking at prehabilitation. We've got consent and shared decision-making, of which one of them, you know, is mine, but there's other providers working this space. We've got then the operative setting, of which there's a huge amount of data. We've got Proxmy, who are filming the operative settings, trying to see, okay, in a rich video environment, how much data do you get? How do you start learning from that? You've got Incision that starts thinking about the traditional Cardex for surgeons. How can you make that sort of 3D and AI driven? You've got Intuitive, who is starting to use AI in their robotic surgery modules. You know, can we start eventually, are you going to have robots that are semi-autonomous? You've then got post-operative data. You've got wearables feeding all of this. You've got education. We've already heard from Jag with the FRIMS. And this is just scratching the surface of how digital is starting to touch us. This is, I've just put this up really briefly if you just want to do a screen capture this, but I just found this a relatively useful, recently published paper that talks about agentic AI. So if you found what I was talking about, agentic AI, that will give you just a bit more information on nothing to do with it. So some cautions as I wrap up. Data in is only as good as the quality of the data that goes in. If it's rubbish in, you get rubbish out. And people stress that a lot, but it is so true. And one of the things that I can't believe we're not actually spending more time doing is cleaning our data, or having data inputters that are putting in clean data. Because we know if we put structured, clean data in, we now have the tools that will be able to analyze it and give us good results. Black box thinking is the other big problem. So the reasoning, how has the AI algorithm got to the answer that it's got to? And you'll see a lot happening in this space about explainability. Can the module explain back to us, mere humans, how it's arrived at that answer? And if it can't explain it, we've got a problem. Because if we don't understand why it's happening, then I think we need to push back. So explainability is a big thing. Motivation, but obviously you've got the ability, you hope AI is going to be for good, but it's got the ability to be driven more for financial profit and less for patients. So it's up to us as surgeons to drive AI, drive these softwares, make sure that all these solutions we're using are working on the benefit of our patient and not for some hidden agenda. Empathy, is an AI platform ever going to remove a human need? No, don't think so. Data privacy, there's a whole lot about that, and I don't have time to go into all of that. And regulation and ethics, that's an absolute minefield. Who's responsible? If the AI says something, who's responsible? Is it still the consultant surgeon in charge, or is it the AI module? And at the moment, it will still be the surgeon. Hallucinations, finally. Again, this goes back to explainability. In the real world, in life, you know, it doesn't particularly matter if the AI puts sort of two heads on the picture of the lion, but in medicine, it matters, you know, a massive amount if it starts hallucinating. And so we really need to start thinking as surgeons, you know, what are we going to tolerate? So what's the literacy, just wrapping this up now, required? So we are required to be fluent in the systems, but as I said, we should increasingly, if there's good UX design, that should become easier for us. We should be able to understand how AI is coming to the conclusions it's coming to. And I do think the one place we really should become knowledgeable in is the ethical and legal awareness and the regulatory compliance, and we should be demanding the solutions that are right for our patients. So just finally to wrap up, on behalf of the iHub, surgeons have always been innovating for the benefit of their patients and professions. There's many surgeons also innovating in this space. There's the iHub, that is a team that's emerged in the Royal College of Surgeons to help innovators, both to work with industry, but also surgeon innovators. And there are many surgeon innovators that are getting involved in digital tools. So we do that by supporting with workshops, events, sessions, innovation clinics. Shout out for the future of the festival of the Future of Surgery Festival, which is happening in April. That's very important. Do sign up for that. There'll be much more digital there. And obviously we're connecting with industry and all those providers I've been talking about. It's our job, I think, to be talking to them. And in the end of the day, as surgeons, we need to get involved in these products because these solutions need to be built with clinicians in mind. And so the sort of wrap-up slide is, it's inevitable, digital's increasing, AI is increasing. I think that's positive, but we need to stay in control of that, which is the shared responsibility. So thank you very much, and hopefully a bit of time for some questions.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that overview. As you say, there is so much going on, and part of what we want to do in the college is to provide support for the members, fellows, about continuing to develop skills and knowledge and having resources like setting agents within your own workspace. So let's just go through in the last 10 minutes a few questions. So if we could. So two things. Francisca unfortunately had to leave, and Nuha Yasin apologizes that ironic yet again that in a digital literacy seminar for technical issues we couldn't get her onto the main stage here, but she is listening to the presentation. So sorry about that, Nuha. But for the rest of us, let's take these questions. So first one here is there a possibility that surgeons could be replaced by artificial intelligence in the future? Any thoughts there? Just fire away.
Can I come in there, Ian? Yeah, I saw that Elon Musk made the bold statement that he thought that surgeons could one day be replaced by robots. I think certainly we've seen the robotic revolution for general surgery, urology, but kind of autonomous robots to be able to replace the process of understanding pathology, having a relationship with the patient, and that's an important part of surgery, is to have a relationship with your patients. I think it's a very unlikely or a long way away. I think there are certain parts of the surgical journey that certainly could be automated, and decision making can have AI elements added to that, but the actual practical aspects of high fidelity surgery where the stakes are very high, I'm not convinced that you can have a robot to replace that. But I also don't think patients are going to necessarily want a robot to replace their surgeon. Certainly a lot of my patients like to come and see me and have a conversation with me.
Yeah. And just to add to that, Ian, I mean, I think we can see how things play out in other high reliability organizations such as the aviation industry. We've had planes that could fly themselves for over a decade, but if the pilot doesn't get on board, the passengers won't get on board. So I think this, and that's a more simplistic thing to fly from A to B. So I think there will be a change in the evolution of how surgery is delivered, and it'll be supported and maybe more quality assured because of AI. But I don't agree with Elon Musk that we are seeing surgeons being replaced anytime soon.
No, absolutely, yeah. It is one of the things I'm really keen for the digital side of surgery in the college to take on, is appreciating that it's embracing these technologies. It's not feeling threatened that you're going to get taken over by them. It's using them for our benefit rather than anything else going on. Okay, let's next question. What digital skills do you think are essential for surgical trainees? So what would your advice be to a surgical trainee if what area of digital should they be thinking about and looking at?
I think the ethics are important from as has been mentioned. So if you use any new technology or any new innovation, the first thing we have a responsibility for, I think, as clinicians and doctors, is first do no harm. So I think that's a great starting point when we look at digital literacy and AI. And then I would say, if you're somebody in training and you're interested in taking advantage of novel technologies, then you need to look at reviews that actually highlight, what are VR headsets good for. They're amazing for lots of different settings. Maybe they have limitations at the moment in the fine proprioception skills such as suturing. So there'll be different technologies that are applicable to different areas of knowledge and skills acquisition. So I would recommend people to get educated on those different elements, and if they want to prioritize something, prioritize the ethical applications.
Yeah, can I add myself? I think the trainees clearly are the key to this. They're going to be the people using all these technologies and developing them and innovating them. So just as a little plug, one of the things that we've done through the digital group is just hopefully about to launch soon, is an update. Like you have your specialty updates, there's going to be an AI robotics update that the college will send around. And I think seeing papers from areas outside your specialty can be a real prompt to think, okay, how can this work for me? So I think just being open to all forms of technology and thinking about how, as an individual and then as a specialty, that can be embraced and move forward. Okay. How do you decide which AI tools to use, and how do you use them well? Any thoughts on that? Oh, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I was saying it was a good question, and the truth is, in the hospital setting, you probably don't have too much choice, and these choices are probably being made for you by your CCIO, by your hospital's digital group. And I guess the caution is you shouldn't really be using software that's accessing patient data that hasn't been approved by your organization. So that's a word of warning. But I think, more than that, we need to be championing to our CCIOs, to our hospital, which software is good for our patients. And I think the only way to really understand that is to get under the bonnet and have a look at that. So as much as possible, look at the demos, speak to the providers, see if other people are using it in other specialties, speak to other hospitals, friends in other hospitals that are using it. Try to work out what the core benefits or the risks of using the problem are.
Yeah, I think it is a difficult thing. I think part of the key to this, the general AI tools like large language models that are available, and as you were saying, understanding how that data works and the ethics and what you can and what you can't be feeding into these models, I think, is really important. So, as surgeons, we need to make ourselves aware of the best ways of doing this and making sure that data is curated well and secure, and that we're not sending patient stuff off into these big large language models. Yeah, okay. So there was one quick question, I think, is for Jag here. Is there a workshop in KSA?
KSA is where?
Yeah, I was wondering that myself.
KSA. If it's in the UK, there'll be a workshop. If you go to the VRIMS, or if you want to apply for a workshop, you just go to the vrims.net website. If you look at surgical societies, there's a events request form there that then will go in through a triage process, and as long as the equipment is available, we will be delighted to come to the KSA and run a VRIMS workshop.
It's in Saudi. Nuhan.
Oh,
so
I'm going to Dubai this weekend, as it happens. So if you want to come and join me at the Face Innovate conference in Dubai, we're running some workshops, but we're always happy to have invitations we've just come back from Bulgaria and Portugal, running workshops, and just to kind of make a comment, Ian, I think on where the future lies for AI. I think you don't need to learn Python. I think or even coding. I think it's massively labor intensive. I think understanding how to create a good AI prompt. The challenge that you have when you get to your 30s and 40s is that the 20-year-olds are doing this now, and in 10 years time they're going to know this inside out, and we'll be using AI, agentic AI or whatever, to create customized workflows in their day-to-day practice, whether it's creating a presentation, whether it's pulling out literature review, whether it's helping to go through exams and passing their FRCS. But of course, that's the kind of academic perspective, and I don't think the new generation will be reading books. I think they're going to be using headsets, and they're going to be using AI and generative AI, and I think it will entirely replace traditional ways to learn. So the sooner kind of my generation certainly, understand these kind of phrases and terminology, and for digital literacy, I think it's really important that we stay abreast of it and stay at least on par with the new generation.
Yeah, and I think that covers the last question we've got here. Is that someone who's still very junior in sixth form, how can I teach or ready myself for digital literacy in surgery and medical practice? It's more of that, isn't it? It's just like you said, young people are familiar with this. They've been brought up with it. It's using their inherent skills that they have to really push this forward, and make sure that it's being done in the right way, and for the benefit of the user that is the surgeon. Any other thoughts on that?
I mean, I think for me, in a really good resource, and I know me and Ryan practically live on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is a fantastic resource in just seeing whether industry is trending. and it's a little bit more kind of a serious platform than a traditional social media platform. But if you join all the AI groups or the XR groups and the digital learning groups in platforms like LinkedIn, you really get to see where the cutting edge technology is steering and navigating, and where the majority of people are moving as they jump from one bit of technology and advancement to the next. And a good example of that are the Meta glasses and the Google glasses that are coming out imminently. You're going to have medical students looking over your shoulder, Ian. Then you're going to hear them whispering to themselves. They're actually talking to their glasses to ask, why is he doing that? And what are the indications of surgery? And what are the common complications? And you're hearing the glasses telling you the common complications of surgery whilst you're operating.
No, fabulous. Yes. So we're out of time, so I'll just wrap up. Can I just say thank you so much to all the panel for your excellent talks. There is really a huge amount of fabulous work that's going on in surgery in the UK, and we've had the privilege of some absolute experts giving their thoughts this evening. It's very much appreciated, and I hope everybody's enjoyed it. So thanks and good night.
Bye-bye.